I studied wine in Italy and have my level 2 sommelier, so if you guys have any wine questions, feel free to ask. Our owner is a man named Delaney. In the early 80s, him and some other farmers out in West Texas, out by Lubbock, got together and decided to switch their crops over to grapes, which is a little bit risky because grapes are not guaranteed to grow. Obviously, his grapes grew. This place is an exact replica of a French chateau that he fell in love with while he was traveling in Europe. So we have slate flooring, solid mahogany doors, vaulted ceilings. All of these frescoes were done by a lady here in Grapevine. They were done by attaching burlap to the ceiling and painting through the burlap to give the appearance of all the cracks and the old age. Each corner represents a different season of the grapevine, so each one is a little bit different from the next. Overhead, this is the Circle of Angels, and I have a cute little story about that I'll tell you guys on the inside. And overhead, this one, I always like to point this out. This is Latin for wine maketh man's heart glad. I agree. If you guys want to follow me outside, I'll tell you a little bit about our grapes and the way that we do stuff around here. Grapes here. We're really lucky to have these because despite the name Grapevine, this is not a grape growing region. It's very misleading. Grapevine is actually named that after a jelly grape called the Mustang grape that grew like crazy when they settled this land and they couldn't get rid of it. And so they would build and it would grow over everything they built and then they couldn't get rid of it. So they decided to name this place Grapevine after that stubborn jelly grape. So we've just kind of embraced the wine culture. European grapes will not grow here. Unfortunately, our soil has a lot of clay in it, so there's not enough room for the grapevines to adequately grow deep enough to produce vibrant fruit. So everything that you see here is a grape called a Norton grape, which is non-European. It was kind of bred to be a grape that's grown in difficult growing conditions, which is what we have here. You guys will get to try that on your tasting today. It's a red wine called Cynthiana. Out in West Texas is where we have our large vineyard. Out there we have 125 acres and we grow 9 different kinds of wine. Mr. Delaney is actually in the grape distribution business, so our winemaking is a small part of that. We do not distribute into stores or restaurants, so we do online and in-location distribution only. So Mr. Delaney is actually a main provider in the state of Texas for other wineries that can't grow their own grapes, like down in Fredericksburg and around the Texas Hill Country. They actually purchase grapes from Mr. Delaney to make their wine with. So his grapes are everywhere. One of the things I like to point out here are our rose bushes. They kind of look a little sad and pruned right now, but they actually serve a really important purpose out here in the vineyard. If there's any bugs or pests or mold or fungus or anything like that in the area, they'll always attack a rose bush before it ever attacks a grapevine. So the person that takes care of our grapes will keep an eye on these to give us a heads up as to what we need to look out for in the vineyard. Right now, as you can see, we've got baby grapes growing right here. These will be getting bigger and more beautiful within the next 2 months. This is going to be a dark red grape eventually. Within the next 2 months, these grapes are going to get bigger and produce sugar. That's what we base our harvest on. It's usually going to be in the middle of August. Since our temperatures are so warm, we harvest earlier here. So between now and then, these are just going to get awesome, and you guys will have to come out and do our public harvest. We do the I Love Lucy grape stomp, the whole bit. You guys are welcome to come check it out. If you guys want to follow me this way, we'll go in the back through the fermentation area. Yes, ma'am. They're very, very sweet. Yeah. And you guys are welcome to come out here afterwards and take pictures in the vineyard or whatever you like. He planted these in 1996. Okay, so when the harvest is over, we have to trim them them all the way down to the stalk of the grapevine, and then they'll regenerate themselves the following year.
Oh, okay.
So we only harvest one time a year. All right, so this is our fermentation tank area. So this is pretty standard among wineries. The alcohol fermentation part of the process takes place in stainless steel. That way nothing can alter the taste of the process that's happening inside of there. So once we get the grapes off of the vine, we crush them and de-seed them and stick them straight into, or stick the juice straight into these tanks. So once we get the grape juice in there, we're gonna add in a French yeast. That yeast will combine with that sugar and naturally start alcohol fermentation. We don't have to do anything besides combine the two, let them go, they do their own thing. It usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks in these tanks for the alcohol to grow as high as we like it. All of our wines are pretty strong, so be forewarned. Once we do get to the alcohol content that we're looking for, these dimpled rings in the center are called cooling rings. We turn those on and it basically shocks the entire load of wine to freezing and causes that yeast that's alive inside of there to die. So whenever that yeast dies, it leaves the wine at exactly that alcohol content it was at whenever we turned these on. So that's how we're able to control the exact content of a bottle of wine. Once that's complete, we hook up hoses to these ports, we filter out that dead yeast, and then we go directly into the oak barrels for aging. And I'll tell you guys more about that when we get in there. If y'all want to check out this room right behind here, there's windows in the middle area that face the front that are a better view. This room contains our Italian bottling machine. This thing is a lifesaver in the wine industry. So once we have the bottles of wine empty, loaded on the far end, well, it'll come around and stop at each of the red numbers. So the red number 1 will clean the bottle, make sure it's free of debris and ready to be filled. Number 2 will fill the bottle to the appropriate level with wine. Number 3 shoots a cork in there. Number 4 drops a foil cap over the top of the bottle. Then it comes around this way and receives a label. If this thing was operating at full capacity, it could spit out about 1,500 bottles in less than an hour of completed wine. It's a fabulous lifesaver in this industry. So back in the old days, every part of this process had to take place by hand in a separate station. So it just required many, many people and many, many hours of time devoted to it. So we value this thing a lot. If you guys want to follow me this way, we'll go into the grand ballroom for a little bit of barrel talk, and then I'll get you started on your tasting. We use a monitoring device that keeps us updated on the level of alcohol as it ferments, so it'll slowly grow, and we monitor it every couple days.
Like a gauge.
Yes, ma'am. And then the last week of fermentation, we have to test it continuously, because if it over ferments, unfortunately with wine, it turns to garbage when it over ferments. So this is our grand ballroom area. We are primarily a wedding venue. We also do corporate events, birthday parties, stuff like that. There's brochures in the front if anybody's interested. So this right here behind me is what is called a ton, T-O-N-N-E-S. Our owner had these shipped over from Italy for us to put on display. So this is my story about the Circle of Angels painting in the front lobby. So if you trace the history of winemaking, the very first winemakers were monks in monasteries in Italy. Monks used to hide these tons in caves to age their wine. Caves are perfect for that because it's cold and dark and relatively undisturbed, which is exactly what wine needs. So the monks would go and they would check the barrels every couple months, make sure it was aging properly and tasting good. Every barrel has a hole on the very top that you can stick a ladle down in there and taste it as it ages. So they noticed that every time they visited, that the wine level in these barrels was receding. So they thought maybe people were sneaking into the caves at night to get a little tipsy. So they decided they were going to put some doors and chains and locks and keep everybody out of the caves and away from their wine. So they did that. They waited about 2 months. They went back to check the wine, and it turns out that the wine level had receded even farther after locking everybody out. So at this point, they had no idea what was going on. So according to the story, the entire monastery decided to go into prayer to kind of figure out what was going on. And through prayer, they were told there's certain angels that are in charge of winemaking and certain angels that are in charge of the vineyard. So all of the missing wine is the angel's share. So the Circle of Angels painting out front represents the winemaker angels of the world. And if you look real close, they're very, very happy. Their cheeks are pink, some of them are even passed out. So that's the story of the winemaker angels. These days, we know now that the missing wine is actually due to evaporation through the barrel. But back then, they didn't understand those scientific concepts. So people all over Europe believed that story for a very, very long time. I think it's cute. I like to tell it.
So where did the monks ferment their wine? In the barrel?
In the barrel. In the barrels. They would do cask fermentation. Back in the old days, they didn't have stainless steel vats yet, so everything took place in oak. These days, we don't use tongs anymore. For one, they're really big, really hard to maneuver. If you get a leak, that's a lot of wine that you're losing. Also, when you think about aging wine in something that's this big, all of the wine that rests on the edges would taste amazing. It would have all the flavors of the wood, everything you want out of aging wine. This giant center area, none of that really gets to rest on the wood, so it would taste completely different than everything around the edges. So when you started mixing that together, it would taste pretty bad. So to combat that, we now use 55-gallon barrels. It makes it a lot easier for us. We're able to rotate them around every 3 months in a process called racking. We use a combination of French oak barrels and American oak barrels here. We also age our wines for 10 to 14 months on the white, and then for the red wines, we do 14 to 18-month aging. You guys are welcome to have a seat at any of the tables or the bar top, and I'll get you started on your tasting. Thank you. Thank you for listening.